We're having some judge problems that everybody's reading. We're having some judges that don't like, killers, murderers being thrown out of the country, so I don't know what their problem is.
Welcome back. This is not the problem desk, but since the president invoked that term, I don't know what the problem is. Among the problems being sorted out in federal court are matters of due process and whether those being deported by the Trump administration actually are killers or murderers, or are they green card holders? Are they U.S. citizens? Are there violations mostly to do with campus protesting, not hard criminality, among the many issues being discussed? And for more insight on where we are on a lot of these matters, I want to bring in Justice Department reporter Jake Rosen, who's with me here at the desk, immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoya Galvez, who joins us from New York. So, Jake, catch us up on Kilmar Abrego Garcia. The president told ABC News that he could make a phone call. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, said he's not going to discuss whether or not there's any conversations going on. What's the latest?
Well, Major, today the judge in the case has the discovery stay that she put in place, so basically pausing all fact-finding in the case for a week, that expired. The Department of Justice went to her again this morning. Looks like they asked for another week or at least more time. She denied that, and she said by Friday, 4 Department of Justice, ICE, State Department officials, all involved with firsthand knowledge of what efforts had been underway or could be underway in Abrego Garcia's return must be deposed. By Monday, the Department of Justice has to answer some narrowed down questions from Abrego Garcia's attorneys. Again, all in the scope of, have there been conversations? What is going on? Where is he specifically? There's been a lot of bad information that the government has put in a lot of their court filings saying that he was in the Supermax prison when he wasn't. I'm sure it's clarifying some of that as well. And then a week after that, there'll be another deadline for some back and forth of what Abrego Garcia's attorneys want in this case, whether they move to potentially hold the Department of Justice in contempt of court, certainly something at this point that the judge could consider, or whether they just want other potentially live witness hearings or anything else along those lines.
Very good. Camilo, I want to talk to you about a rather testy exchange between the President of the United States and Terry Moran of ABC in their interview talking about Kilmar Abrego Garcia and assertions the president made in that interview. Let's listen.
He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattooed.
Oh, he had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not have the
do that.
letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshopped.
Camilo, what do we know about this? I've read lots of different stories, experts quoted who are very experienced in judging tattoos related to gang behavior who say what they've seen doesn't reflect anything that they've ever seen before. What's your reporting on this?
Well, Major, the only information that the U.S. government has officially submitted in immigration court, at least to allege that this man from El Salvador is allegedly part of a gang, is information that they say stemmed from a credible informant back in 2019 who said that Mr. Abrego Garcia was part of this vicious gang, and also the fact that he was wearing clothing, attire that officials say is indicative of what gang members wear from that Central American country. And that finding was not disputed by the immigration judge who denied him bond at the time. This was before a separate immigration judge, Major, said that Mr. Abrego Garcia could not be deported to his home country of El Salvador because of concerns that he could be persecuted by gang members there. And now we know, of course, that the administration has admitted in federal court and also now in the court of public opinion that it made a legal mistake at the very least by sending this man and deporting him to the only country where a judge said he could not be sent to.
And there are several photographs of Kilmar Abrego's hands that don't show the tattoos the president said that are there.
That's right, yes.
Very good. Jake, catch us up on what happened today. Palestinian Columbia University student Moshe Madawi released. The case isn't over, but he's released out of custody.
That's right. And the immigration proceedings will continue to go and play out as they should in a case like this, where obviously under the same statute that Marco Rubio has applied to Mahmoud Khalil, another Columbia University student, that because of his spread of anti-Semitism, alleged, and by going to these pro-Palestinian protests in New York City, that he should be deported under those grounds. He was released from jail. The Department of Justice asked for 7 more days, as they've done in so many of these cases, to keep him detained. The judge compared what was going on in this case and so many others around the country to McCarthyism, basically saying that while the wheels of history will come around again on things like this, but for now we're seeing an exercise of power that is illegal by detaining people who are here permanently and lawfully, who's a citizen of the United States, and somebody who is allowed to be a student at Columbia. However, the Trump administration is still going to continue deportation efforts as this case plays out, and he will, again, have to appear in front of this judge eventually. Again.
And this language about McCarthyism is essentially there are these assertions made, and then when requests are made by judicial authorities for underlying proof or verification of that to back up the assertions, there's often a gap.
Yeah, and not just the gap, but it's also because we said so, right? It is this brick wall that the government has given where the Department of Justice and the Trump administration seems to be stonewalling its attorneys so that even as lawyers for these people try to have their cases played out, the government attorney walks in. We've seen this happen all around the country. I've been to 4 or 5 proceedings so far where they say, we don't know. We don't know the facts in the case. Because of that, it becomes so much harder, except for in the one case of Abrego Garcia where an attorney walked in and said, this man should have never been deported and we regret the error, essentially. It makes it very difficult for any progress to be made.
And that attorney was fired.
Or at least placed on administrative leave.
A little administrative leave, exactly. They keep saying he was fired, but anyway, that's important. Jake Rosen, Camilo, Montoya, Galvez in New York, thank you so very much for your assistance. I appreciate it.